We are live. All right. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. We are going live with this incredible team that is joining us from MassVR. We're going to be diving into job support for neurodivergence and people with disabilities, especially in the Massachusetts area. We're going to be talking about voc rehab and the supports available from a federal and state level for people looking for jobs. And we have two experts here in the room that have been supporting this community of neurodivergence for years now and have so much intel, so many insights on how to do so effectively. I'm going to pass the floor or the mic over, Anthony, to share, and then Tina, a bit about what you do and how you got into this world.
Sure. So my name's Anthony Bauman. I work with Department of Developmental Services, of varying disabilities, transition age through adulthood, IDD, and cognitive disabilities to find employment, competitive employment in their communities. I got into this line of work when I was in college through an internship. My support team, and we can talk about the importance of support teams later, but my support team thought that this would be a good path for me, and I explored it, and I have not turned back since. So that was about 10 years ago, and I'm still going.
Cool. Well, I sure don't want to tell you how many years I've been doing this now that he said that, but I also started in this field as a college student. I was a job coach. I think it was my part of my junior and senior year. I worked at a large college cafeteria dish room. Okay. And I worked with an incredible group of employees who, as I graduated, I became their employment specialist and then helped them to like stretch out, learn new skills, expand their goals, and even just their ideas about what kind of work they could do. And so that set me up on a journey of always doing this. So I've been in many workforce development programs, and later went on to get my graduate degree in organizational psychology. Because no matter the job seeker, it's always amazing to help people find work and grow both personally and professionally throughout their whole job search process and their whole career journey. And I've really enjoyed it. It's meant the world to me. And so I've been doing it about 3 times as long as Anthony.
Incredible. It's so amazing to see, people who get into this field so early and understand the community and lead with their heart and so much passion and then pursue it for so many years and don't give up, even when the system can be really hard, not only on job seekers, but also, on us trying to support every day. So it's incredible that you've persevered and we're now talking all these months later after we connected to bring this to the spotlight and bring this to platforms and to job seekers looking for work and support. So for anyone just tuning in one sentence, can you share what is VR, which stands for vocational rehabilitation? What does it mean? What does it involve?
I think if you had to boil it down, it really is it's support, and it's support in filling in the gaps as to what people need. In our line of work, we talk a lot about person-centered services, which involves just really getting to know the person, identifying what the needs are, and filling in the gaps. We have a lot of people who have never had jobs before. They just have spent their entire lives in school systems, and they don't really understand the nuances and differences and what it means to be in a professional setting. So we'll show them what that life is like through mock interviews, professional visits to employers, or maybe other people who just haven't worked in 20, 30 years and they just don't understand how the job market's changed. And then there's other people who just have specific needs related to their disability that maybe they need a little extra instruction at work. Maybe they need a little bit more hand holding, and maybe they just need somebody to be that mediator between themselves and their employer because there's some sort of communication barrier. Whatever the need is, it's support and filling in the gap.
And it's a state and a federal program. And so, vocational rehabilitation is supported throughout the United States, and I know in other countries as well. It's created to prepare, secure, regain, or maintain employment for a wide variety of disabilities, so that it's very inclusive of a lot of them. So it often involves career counseling. Sometimes it offers job training, job placement assistance, and then even some assistive technology resources and tools to help overcome employment barriers.
Got it. Okay, and how do job seekers typically get access to these services? Is there any qualification required? Is there any website they can go to if they live in Massachusetts or outside of Massachusetts?
So there is a difference between the typical VR system that is in every state and the Department of Developmental Services. So the state of Massachusetts also has a VR program called Massability, which has their own eligibility requirements, and that would be quote unquote more similar to what other states offer. Massachusetts also has the the Department of Developmental Services, which offers more holistic services beyond just employment. We do have an eligibility requirement to participate in these services. It's usually based on disability. People will sign up for services with the Department of Developmental Services, and they'll meet with their team to determine what they need to live a more holistic life. And a lot of the time, employment is part of that. And that's where we would come in. Um, Tina, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, again, it's available in every state, but in Massachusetts in particular, it's super easy to apply to Massability. You do it right online. So
Yep.
that's one great thing. I've actually assisted people in applying for Massability, and it's a wide range of disabilities, and so it has much broader eligibility requirements. For us at DDS, again, like Anthony said, it's a very specific, and you have to be connected to a service coordinator and be found eligible through our intake and eligibility unit. But yeah, there's a lot of resources throughout the states around vocational rehabilitation. I just want to make mention, DDS in Massachusetts is specific to providing some additional supports to neurodivergent job seekers. That might be a different looking agency in other states. So Connecticut's the same in here, but I'm not really familiar with all the other states. Yeah.
Got it. Super helpful. And it's good for the community to know that, there are resources out there and can begin to research, go into ChatGPT and ask, here's the state I'm in, what disability or neurodivergent support services are out there for me. Thank you. And so who would you say is the ideal person that benefits most from a lot of the support that your team provides right now? If you could describe a persona or who
Sure.
you typically help.
So if I'm being realistic, I think anybody could benefit from our supports, especially anybody coming out of high school, just because of the discrepancy and what it means to live a life in high school and live a life as a full-time employee. But most specifically, I think we do a lot of helping people with just understanding the right thing to say in the right moment, not make rash decisions based on impulses. There's just a lot of people who are, again, just uncomfortable in the world of employment, and I think there's definitely aspects of disabilities that we work with that kind of exasperate some of these impulses and anxieties, and we're really just steadying the ship. And I think people who need that support, we can offer a great service to.
And I have to ditto, because I said I was going to do that, ditto what Anthony said. Honestly, everybody could benefit from employment supports. And I say that because I've worked with almost every job seeker you can imagine. For a time period, I was a career coach for first-time managers and supervisors. Like, everybody can grow, right, professionally, and get insights and benefit from that feedback loop. Okay, hey, did I catch that nuance? Am I really prepared for that? Did I describe that transferable skill or experience that I had? Like, everyone can benefit from this. And
Yeah.
so there's no one ideal, is what I'm going to say. But when you've been having some challenges, maybe you've been out of work for a little while, or you haven't gotten a lot of positive feedback from your job search activities. I mean, listen, everyone can use help. So never feel like, oh, I don't really need help, or I don't need as much help as other people. Who cares? Take advantage of every resources you can get.
Yep. Absolutely.
That actually makes me wonder if there, in your both of your tenure working in this field, would you say there's something that's come up that you've shared with a job seeker that's been incredibly valuable, whether it was advice you gave or tips at any stage of the job finding process that you think really changed their trajectory in getting a job?
I think
Advice.
Yeah, so I
I
was
think
working with someone, I'm trying to think of how long ago, about a year ago, for example, had just gotten laid off, hadn't been successful on their own finding a new job. They got referred to our DDS program, and we started doing kind of digging in, right? Who are you applying to? Very, very independent, very doing a lot of the job search activities on his own. But once we hit the mock interview stage, I brought in a couple of team members, and we were working with this job seeker. And what I found is he had too much up here, and he couldn't get it out. Right, so answering the questions, answering them succinctly, but almost too succinctly, that he wasn't really getting it across the wealth of experience and skills he had to transfer into the jobs. And that particular experience, we did it a few times, and he got a job very soon after that. And I knew he would because he's so talented, had the credentials. But it's that opportunity to really get that feedback, I think, made all the difference for him.
I love that you pulled in a team of people to do a simulation of an interview from your team. That really helps understand how to interface with many people. And yeah, you said get it out of your mind, and sort of communicating your
Right.
skills can sometimes be a challenge. But I think practice really helps with that, especially in front of a group.
Yeah.
Yeah, Anthony, any advice you gave?
I think the best advice that, because a lot of the individuals we come in that have come in, especially the younger ones, have this idea of what employment is in their heads. And while you do have to be professional at work, that doesn't mean that you can't enjoy it. And I think that's a misconception. And I can tell people that all I want. It doesn't really sink in until they actually like get their first job and maybe like find a coworker that they enjoy spending time with. And I think when that lesson sinks in, I think that's a game changer for people. Because they're, like at the end of the day, a job is a job, but there is enjoyment to be had there, and a sense of purpose that can be found.
Absolutely. Yeah, sometimes neurodivergence, that we often work with struggle to understand how to conform to the system, right? And how to bring those strengths into a box because so much of us think so outside the box.
Mm-hmm.
So
Sure.
it's great to have a group of people that can kind of speak the language and be the bridge between the two. And ideally, if the employer is able to, meet the individual in the middle, then the individual can still maintain their divergence, and maintain their authenticity while also bringing their talents to the job. Uh,
Absolutely. I agree.
yeah, love that your team is the bridge. Amazing. Okay, well, are there any results or success stories? I know right a minute before we hopped on this live, we had one of these. But
Yeah.
any, how have you worked with job seekers and professionals and supported them in making their jobs and careers successful?
Um, yeah, I mean, as we said, I had just received a text message right before hopping on. Somebody had just found employment. Um, and it is such a good feeling because there is a lot of, I've been saying this a lot lately. We want people to prove themselves wrong, right? A lot of people who come into the job search program and they just aren't confident that they're going to be able to find a job. They don't think their qualifications meet the criteria, or they don't have enough experience. And then just to kind of see the way like they brighten up, or their optimism, like they gain that optimism as they get their first interview, and maybe as the second interview comes, and then finally like they're offered a position. um like really, like this is what it's all about. But the ultimate success, I would say, is when somebody gets a job doing exactly what it is that they want to do, because that's where people stick around for the long term, right? We want long term competitive employment. We don't want people just to take a job for the money because, I think people on the spectrum have a hard enough time now going to work and, masking and feeling like, as you had mentioned, trying to fit into that box. Like if you enjoy what it is that you're doing, it just takes so much pressure off of the entire, just the entire process.
So true. And that's why finding the fit is so important up front, right? And understanding not only the job alignment, but also the team alignment and the types of tasks that make the most sense. And also the types of, management styles. There's so much to a job, right? And even the location, if
Yeah.
it's remote or in person, and what the physical and virtual spaces are like. And I'm going to put a quick plug in for the Mentor platform. Speaking of match and alignment, so we do have the app now live on the App Store as well as the Google Play Store. It's Mentra AI, and any job seeker can download it and get access to the Mentor Manatee. I think inspired by Duolingo's Owl, and it guides job seekers on the journey to understanding your career goals and mapping you to a job every day. If you turn on your notifications, it'll send you a job per day that is best aligned to your neurotype. So quick plug in there, and we're so excited to work with this team and so many others to expand this app because it's really trained on this population. So the Manatee really understands the needs of this community and tries to recommend not just jobs, but also upskilling opportunities, partners, job coaches, and so much more. So returning back to it, for a job seeker watching today, what is the first step that they can take to access Massability program? We talked a little bit about this. What can they do? And is there a link or a place they can go to?
Yeah, absolutely. So both are easy. You just Google the whatever department it is that you want to partner within your state. I've noticed a lot of people actually apply. Um, I know Massability in Massachusetts specifically has much less stringent, eligibility requirements, but you're also not going to get as detailed supports. DDS, you do have to have a little bit more of a disability, and the eligibility requirements are going to be more strict. But again, there's just so much more that goes into these services here at DDS than at Massability. Other states, just Google it, see what you dig up. I do not think it will be hard to find.
Is that a ditto, Tita?
Well, I think we had answered that a little earlier, so I'll do a little backdrop. One of the things that's important to share is like, how do our connections and our partnerships with employers benefit our job seekers? And Anthony was a little shy because Anthony leads a group for our business development partnerships. But just an example, and I want to share it because we're looking. I mean, I don't know how many job seekers are on here, but oftentimes when we have some challenges with adjusting to changes at work, which is a very common problem, right? Sometimes having the employment supports, having vocational rehabilitation or having a job coach can really help because we can work with the employer to just take a step back. Okay. Sometimes it's like, how is everyone receiving this change? Like, earlier this year, we had someone who they changed the process of their restaurant, and it's not a regular restaurant. It's like a hospital restaurant, and we were able to work with the employer to get a reading pen to help make the process faster and easier for the individual who is struggling with the changes, because they didn't need to do that. They didn't need to use reading and writing as a part of their instant task, right? So now all of a sudden it's new. And so using assistive technology, working with the employer to see what else might help everybody. And so in the same case, before they had to read, we did picture menus, and everyone could use them if they needed them, So I think that the success of working with VR, working with employers, is we help broaden their perspective of the resources and supports that help all of their employees, not just an employee with a particular disability or challenge or barrier,
That makes a lot of sense. We actually had someone drop this in the chat here too. Hello, thank you so much for all your insightful information. I'm a career coach at the University of Florida. I want to create programs, workshops, blogs that center around helping neurodivergent folks advocate for themselves and their needs in workplaces. Do you have an example of ways that have worked to empower others to advocate for themselves? Phenomenal question.
Sure.
Anyone else can drop other questions in the chat as well.
I think people get the confidence to advocate for themselves the same way you build confidence to do anything else, which is you just got to get out there and you got to do it. And advocacy starts small, right? It starts with your family and your friends, just putting your foot in the ground and saying, hey, like, this is what I need, or this is what I don't need. And then it kind of grows from there. Then maybe it happens within your friend group or with your teachers. Just talking about what you need, and then maybe doing the same for your friends, right? Like, hey, like within my friend group, like maybe there's a need that isn't being met, and just like noticing it yourself and speaking up for it. And it just keeps growing from there. So that would be my advice. And if you have a disability, and you're in school and you have an IEP, the best place in the world to practice that in a structured environment is your IEP meetings. That's probably more advice for high schoolers, but it's still great advice, and I'm sticking with it.
%. Yeah, no, we've seen advocating for yourself in corporate environments and universities. There's so many different. Tina, did you have something you wanted to share?
I just want to give a few resources, right? This is a great question. Thanks for asking it, because we partner often with an organization called Western Mass Self-Advocacy. But self-advocacy groups are growing all around the country. There are also companies who create employee resource groups, right? And so what I appreciate about what Anthony said is it takes practice. You start small. You are in these environments and you keep practicing it. And you practice it first with something that's not so like skin in the game, right? You practice it, right, with other people. But when it's a skill that you build. You don't have, it's not like we're not all born with self-advocacy. Like I can speak up for myself. It's actually a skill we develop. And we get better and we articulate it a little bit better. We better understand the environments. But the best place to do that is practicing it actually, not like just reading about it, right? So I love that you're thinking that way.
Yes, so true. And, to your point, both of your points, speaking up about it, sharing how you think differently, I think a big mindset shift that we're seeing now is rather than proposing it as, a challenge or a weakness, or a deficit, which is sort of that old medical model, now moving towards this is actually a huge asset if it is supported in the right ways. And for example, hypersensitivity can be another form of saying I need hyper focus and no interruptions. Though if I get 8 hours of hyper focus, I can deliver what would have taken someone a week to do, because I just didn't have that interruption. So there's ways to frame it that change that framing of neurodivergence into more of a strengths-based one. And so that's what we encourage everyone to kind of, when they're asking for that support from their teammates or classmates, to share that, okay, this additional change or adjustment will empower me so much more in these ways.
I agree.
And it's a shift. Yeah, it's happening, I think, everywhere. And we see this in Silicon Valley too, where, engineers all talk about their neurodivergence as a strength, because it allows them to be better engineers in their workplace. So I think it's only going to be more pervasive. We have another question here from Maria Jikla. Public sector here. Any suggestions for neurodivergent people changing industries, trying to get into the private sector? Great question.
So I've actually worked in both the public and private sector. And just as far as, just as an employment specialist and a job developer. And I would just prepare for the change of pace. The private sector is much more, it's much more heavily paced. It's much more results driven. It's much more, bottom lines, and numbers on a stat sheet. Um, and just be prepared for that. Not that it isn't possible, but it is more so for people with more like busybody personalities. The public sector is more relaxed. And it is a lot more people who are kind of in this field for the love of the game. For me, that was much more preferred. Like I do love this job, and I like being around other people who love this job. Um, and being around people who were there to make a profit was a little bit more uncomfortable for me. But it really is all just about finding out what works for you and then chasing that perfect fit. So I'm always a big advocate for exploring everything. I say go for it and see what happens.
Yeah, and when you're changing industries, again, this is for all job seekers. So, in addition, people who are neurodivergent, it's about looking at what are your transferable skills. Okay, when you want to change, to be very intentional about what are the scopes to Anthony's point, like what are the differences, what are the expectations. Do your research, have some informational interviews, contact people in related fields to get some ideas about what those expectations, how they might look different than your current industry or a different setting that you're in, so that you can really do a really good job. And sometimes that takes help and people like pointing things out or fleshing things out or making it a little more full. But we have so many skills that can translate. But if a different word is used or a different context is used, we feel like we don't know what we're doing, right? Or we don't know how to do it, but we really do. And so sometimes really being taking a lot of time to think about those transferable skills is the most effective way to get into that new industry. And I've actually seen that happen more than once.
Yeah. LinkedIn is your best friend. Just message people. A lot of people won't answer, but just do it anyways. If 2 or 3 people answer and they allow you to pick their brains, then you're in a good spot.
Right.
Totally. Yeah, thanks Maria for the question. And I would be very curious what industry, because it's so variable across industries. So if you want to share any more details on the types of transfer, role transfers and industry transfers you're looking at. But yeah, it seems, public sector versus private. I haven't worked in public, but what I love about corporations, as was mentioned earlier, is the ability to join ERG programs as well and apply a lot of your passions for all sorts of, minority groups or, activities outside of work, volunteering. Like there's so many ways to get involved with the community in corporate, which is great. And then the pace is also interesting, understanding the pace of the team, because I know that's very different, right, in public sector, where things take, months versus corporate or even startups. It's like a whole spectrum. But yeah, thank you so much for your question, Maria. That was really a great one. I'll go back to my questions. If anyone else has questions to drop in the chat, feel free and we'll tackle them. Where do you see VR-based job support going in the next 3 to 5 years? We've seen so many changes across not just the marketplace and the jobs that are available, but also across the administration and what types of supports are available. If you were to, predict where it's going and what that would look like, what would you say?
Sure. So VR-based supports mirror competitive employment, as the entire world seems to understand now. Competitive employment is in a weird spot. We kind of don't really know where it's going. There's a lot of new technologies being introduced with artificial intelligence. What jobs is that going to eliminate? What jobs is it going to create? But we follow the same trends that everybody else follows, right? I said earlier on, we're just filling in the gaps and we're supporting people where they need support. And people need support in the competitive job market. So if the market changes and there's just new jobs being introduced, our role is to adjust with the flow, learn more about these new jobs that are emerging, follow the trends, and just be the best advocate for people that we can be. So where it's going to end up, your guess is as good as mine, but we'll see where it goes.
But given, we're talking about AI a little bit, and I know that you just brought up the manatee on mantras, of course. There's so much happening around information and specific information. I really feel like where we're headed is really building more confidence and skills in interpersonal relationships and in communication and networking. because some things are getting taken off the table because it's easier to have the computer do it, right? So what we need to highlight and really support people in is establishing some strategies around your communication needs, your styles of supervision. How do you need to organize your work? And how are you going to interact in these team dynamics, right? And so again, just to get cross over the threshold of some the things I typically find as challenges for neurodivergent people, is just finding opportunities to build those skills. I think the other thing that stands out to me is that we need to, as vocational rehabilitation providers, we need to be really focused not just on our job seekers, but on the needs of the employers and helping them to see their value of having an inclusive and diverse workforce. And so the more we give them equal energy and attention, the better the matches will be.
Absolutely. Yeah, we see that, it's so tough with a two-sided kind of supply and demand, right? We need the employers to be hiring, we need the skills to be aligned, and then only if there's a perfect match will that progress. But there's also a lot of companies I've heard that are now carving out, once they understand the individual and what their strengths are, then they carve out roles. Have you seen that type of employment be common? Once you understand,
So yeah,
once the employer understands the strengths of the job seeker.
Yep. Yeah, so we call that job carving. It does definitely happen, and we have a few people on our caseload right now who have carved positions. It happens a lot with smaller family-run businesses. It does happen from time to time in larger corporations, less so only because of the hoops that need to be jumped through. And corporations do like to have kind of like they like to put like roles into boxes, and just the people that we work with notorially are not a fan of boxes, right? We talked about this before. They like to kind of be their own person, and that can happen under specific supervisors and managers. But as far as like role creation goes, we do find that works best with smaller organizations. But it does happen, and people like that's the best case scenario, and people have really thrived in those types of roles.
Absolutely.
And on occasion, you'll find a large corporate entity who is dedicated to making space to value people with differing abilities, and they have department. I don't want to say carving, but yeah, I've been to programs and conferences where employers have, TJ Maxx is one. One of the IT ones, the big IT ones did this, but they literally have a department, a special project focusing on hiring and engaging neurodivergent job seekers to provide the very needed different perspective and skills to offset, more traditional roles. So it's out there. It's just it's not super common, but it is out there.
Thank you so much. And I know we're a bit over time here. I just want to quickly pose this last question, which is if you were to imagine an ideal future where everyone has the support that they need and folks are getting employed, what would that future look like, and what might you change to get us there?
Yeah. So I mentioned, one of the biggest like question marks about the future of VR sports is AI, but I also think it's also one of the biggest sources of opportunity. And when we talk about universal supports, I think that AI is the ultimate universal support, right? This is something that has the potential to level the playing field for everybody. So as far as the future goes, I'm really excited about that. So I just wanted to say it.
I really like that question, actually, when you said, what's the future of work that excites you most? And I think what excites me most is that we're entering into a season where individuals are embracing their differences, and they're finding ways to use their unique talents, interests, and skills to enhance their job prospects and build supportive work, environments for themselves. And, it's very exciting to hear it, to watch it. I don't know, you guys watch, we don't have a lot of commercials anymore because, we love to stream and cut out all commercials. But I'm telling you, if you look at the media, you look at even print media, you're seeing more and more diversity. And I feel like it's exciting that people can be themselves more and more and not have to, what we say traditionally call masking, like, oh, I got to fit in with everybody. I have to conform. I have to fit in. I'm excited about the opportunity to be okay, to be a little different, to be yourself. So there I go.
Totally. And there's all this research coming out now about the cognitive tax that takes on you that reduces your productivity in a workplace when you have to channel that towards
So true.
those typical norms. Thank you both so much for joining us. This has been so insightful. We will hopefully continue to do these and have these conversations. Oh, there are so many more questions in the chat. Wow. I guess if you both have time, maybe we can tackle. I totally. Thank you, Maria. We had someone share really quick. How would you recommend working with someone who is a known sex offender with a TBI in a small community get a job? Let's assume the VR services are waitlisted. Doc does not support this type of service, and the Title IV partners are under WIOA and not interested in helping this individual.
Sure. So there's a lot going on there.
Yeah.
As far as the TBI goes, we would need a lot more information on how the TBI is affecting you specifically. As far as the felony goes, we would ask a lot of questions on whether it's sealed, whether it's unsealed. Are you going to pass a background check? Assuming you're not going to pass a background check, my go-to strategy is people love a comeback story. If you go to an interview and they want to hire you and they say, hey, we're going through the background check, just be honest. Let them know where you are at. Let them know where you are now, and let them know the steps you took to get there. It might not work. You're in an unfortunate situation where you're at the hands of your background check. But honesty is the best policy, and I'll say it again: people love a good comeback story. So just keep fighting to come back from it. And you'll be good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The other thing to think about that is there's a career services that's universal. It's called the America's career system, right? And so every state also has universal career services and training available for job seekers. And many of them have a special department, or not usually a whole department, but individuals or a program that's focused on offenders. And so I know Anthony, even just, I think it was last summer, was really connecting with who are employers who are friendly towards people with a background check, who have been more open to it, and just really guiding people's, there's restrictions obviously with particular depending on what your criminal background is. And so obviously we have to go to the industries that you're allowed to work in them. But there are ways to use the Career Center system to kind of help find those employers who are more friendly towards people with a background.
Yeah, and I know in Massachusetts specifically, the program you're talking about, Tina, Mass Hire, they also have programs that you can work with them on to, I use this word, get your felony sealed. Mm-hmm. So what essentially that means is, when a company does a background check on you, it's not going to come up, and you just don't have to disclose it at all. That's the ideal situation. If you have a probation officer, they can help you with that. If you're in a position where you can get a lawyer, that's somebody who can help with that. Or you can just look up how to do it in your state specifically. I wish I could speak for the rest of the country. I can't. But there are ways to make that happen. And then there's also just employers that don't do background checks. We call these Corey-friendly employers. Look into them. I know there's a couple in our area. I think Home Depot is one. And they're just such a big employer, depending on where you are in the country. So look into it. But look up who's a Corey-friendly employer in your area and just go from there. There are ways around this. It's not easy, but it can be done.
Wow. So many insights there I did not know about. And yeah, so important to know that there are ways to come back and enter into society. And I'm so glad that you both are well versed in this. Thank you so much. I just wanted to share some quick things before we close. Every week we have community events starting on May 28th next week. One of our teammates, Drew, is going to be running this with the job seeker community, especially taking insights from our Discord and servicing those to live streams like this. So stay tuned for weekly events just like this. And we are also launching an employer podcast called Wired Divergently that is on LinkedIn. And so we will be releasing that as well. If you want to find it, it's mentor.com/podcast. And then again, do access our download our mobile app or web app by going to app.mentor.com. And we want to keep the support going. We want to keep the community going. We believe that the future is in real life events, IRL. So we want to take this virtual community and bring it to in person as well, because it's time to end the loneliness epidemic and time to support each other on this journey. So thanks you both, Tina, Anthony, for joining us. We will continue
Our
to
pleasure.
spread the word about what you do and this partnership. And thanks everyone for joining, and we'll see you on the next one.